Well, good evening and thanks for joining us. Our two initial speakers are still on their way for reasons I'll explain in a wee while, but let's start by introducing myself. My name is Dave Nellist and I've organised tonight's meeting together with help from senior trade union representatives on the TUSC steering committee and from the collective. I was elected to the House of Commons in 1983 with Jeremy as a Labour MP. And as the second youngest Labour MP that year, I was put in an office together with the youngest Labour MP, one Anthony Charles Linton Blair. We didn't last long before Tony Blair moved to another office with Gordon Brown, where New Labour was born. So if you want to blame anybody for New Labour, I'll hold my hands up. I was expelled from the Labour Party in 1992 for being prepared to go to prison over the poll tax, and later spent 14 years as an independent socialist councillor on Coventry City Council for the Socialist Party. I'm now the national chair of TUSC, which was co-founded by Bob Crow, the late General Secretary of the RMT. Now, I'm not going to stress much now or over the evening on why we need a new working class party, just to say Labour isn't Labour anymore. When I listen to Rachel Reeves going on about regulations being a boot on the neck of entrepreneurs, I can close my eyes and hear Nigel Lawson. When Keir Starmer talks about us becoming an island of strangers, I can hear Enoch Powell, and I sat 3 feet away from Enoch Powell for his last 4 years in the Commons. Many here tonight are fighting the battles against Labour on the bin strike in Birmingham, cuts to benefits and wages, reintroduction of private profit into our essential public services, genocide in Gaza, on democratic rights, and I believe my friend Audrey White from the Merseyside Pensioners, who was arrested last night in protesting against the ban on Palestine action, is with us tonight. But the principal reason that we've had this short meeting this evening is for a business-like, practical discussion of the steps we can take to bring forward a new party that's rooted in the organisations and communities of the working class, and of the role in which organised trade union activists like yourselves can play. I'm especially pleased about the turnout. At the latest count, we had over 1,400 people registered, and since this meeting can unfortunately only hold 1,000 in the Zoom room, it's now also available on a live Facebook streaming on my Dave Nellist Politician page. At 2 o'clock this afternoon, when I last had a chance to look at 1,200 people registered, 97% were in a trade union. We have members tonight of at least 30 of the 48 TUC affiliated unions. 9 of the 11 unions affiliated to Labour have members here, and some are in large numbers. We have around 200 Unison activists and over 500 activists from Unite. And so I hope to announce at the end of tonight how we can involve you all in future activities. One final point. What tonight isn't, because it's not in my purview to give, is it's not a meeting launching a new party, or of a name, or of a conference, or structures, or policies, or democracy. All those things still need to be discussed. And according to the media, there are discussions taking place at different levels about these things. And hopefully tonight we'll contribute to trade unionists and trade unions having a bigger role in those discussions. But there's clearly an enormous enthusiasm out there and a huge potential support for a new party. 3 opinion polls in particular, More in Common, Find Out Now and YouGov, in the past couple of weeks have shown the potential for a new party, particularly if it's associated with Jeremy, at between 10 to 18% electoral support. Most significantly, YouGov puts support amongst 18 to 24-year-olds at 36%. And these are people who almost all couldn't vote for Jeremy in 2017 or 2019. Those polls reckon a new party would take substantial support from Labour, from the Liberal Democrats and from the Greens, but according to those 3 polls, not yet from Reform UK. In those polls, Reform still shows from 7 to 9% ahead of the other establishment parties. But that can change. In 2017, Labour under Jeremy Corbyn and radical policies increased its vote by 3.5 million, the biggest rise in any party since the Second World War. And significantly, 1 million of those extra votes came from people who in 2015 had voted for Nigel Farage's UKIP. So a new party with radical socialist policies can break the mould of British politics in both senses of that word. And if the tens of thousands of trade union branches, the hundreds of thousands of trade union activists mobilise the resources and the social cohesion of the trade union movement, we can reach into working class communities and break reform's bubble. That's what we have to try and do in the next few weeks and months to build for. I'm particularly pleased that some of the earlier speakers tonight, all speaking only for 3 or 4 minutes, will be explaining how these things are already starting in some key unions. As I say, it's a short meeting. If everybody who speaks after our opening speakers only speaks for 3 or 4 minutes, we can at best get 15 to 20 contributions. That's why we do want to organise further meetings, perhaps of activists in separate unions, to ensure more people can contribute to discussions than this initial meeting tonight will allow. If you do wish to ask a question or contribute, please put a message into the chat. Don't raise your hand. There's no way I can see 1,000 people on this computer screen. But a message in the chat will come to me, and I'll do my best to get a few people into the discussion. If there are any specific questions that we don't reach tonight, I'll try and reply to you over the next few days. If you're watching us on Facebook, then you can put questions in the comments. Unfortunately, I won't probably see those until after the meeting is over. But in both cases, I'd be particularly interested to know if you thought you could organise in your local area or in your particular union further meetings of activists who want to push this idea further. And it would be helpful, if it would be helpful myself or for one of the other senior trade union activists involved with us so far, no doubt we could help with supplying a speaker. Let me know. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thanks for coming and for joining us tonight. I was going to say I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker, Aslen McCluskey, who was the General Secretary of my union, Unite, now retired. But it doesn't seem like we've been able to get the connection with him because he's on holiday. So my apologies for that. Perhaps somebody in technical support could now tell me if our second main speaker, Jeremy Corbyn, has managed to join us. The reason I asked that is that although today's business in the House of Commons was scheduled to be a single general debate, three new statements were added this afternoon, including a key one on the Middle East. And I know Jeremy was in the Commons at least half an hour ago, hoping to get a question in on that Middle East statement. If we haven't got Jeremy, let's go to our first NEC member, as are the first 4 or 5 that I'm going to introduce to you. The first one tonight will be Suzanne Mooner. Suzanne is a member of Unite National Executive Committee, the NEC, and you may have seen reports that at the Unite Policy Conference, an emergency motion which was put forward in connection with the Birmingham bin strike also has raised the prospects of Unite reassessing its role, since Unite is one of those 11 unions affiliated to the Labour Party. So Suze is going to explain to us how the conference went and what next steps are being considered in Unite itself. Suze, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Suzanne Moon, I'm a rep at City of Bristol College and also a member of the National Executive Council in Unite. Thanks so much for inviting me. It certainly was an exciting conference. And I think the first thing that I would like to say, I think is very relevant to what happened on the conference floor, was that we had visibly a much more diverse membership on the conference floor, especially with a much higher number of younger reps that have just newly been elected. And I believe this did have a significant impact on what happened subsequently. News came out at conference that as soon as the strike leaders from Birmingham bin strike got on the train to come down to Brighton to address conference, the council issued, this is a Labour council, issued redundancy notices for anyone who was refusing to sign new contracts with, in some cases, an £8,000 loss of salary for some people. With some immediate organisation by mainly Unite Broad Left supporters and Socialist Party members, an emergency motion was put together which promised, first of all, obviously, solidarity to the bin workers, agreed to suspend all Birmingham Labour councillors and Angela Rayner from Unite membership, and also pledged significantly that if the council went ahead with its fire and rehire, we would call a conference to discuss Unite's relationship with the Labour Party. Although it wasn't explicitly part of the motion, obviously the main consideration would be whether to disaffiliate from Labour, and we are Labour's biggest backer. When this motion was put to the conference by a young rep, he received an overwhelming standing ovation, and the motion passed with just 5 out of 800 delegates abstaining. I don't even think anyone voted against it. The vote obviously wasn't just about the handling of the bin dispute and the way that the Birmingham bin strikers were being treated, but also about Grangemouth, about Tata Steel, the winter fuel allowance, the two-child benefit cap, and cuts to disability benefits, among other things. It was clear from the mood of the conference through the whole week that there is a simmering anger at Labour's failure to represent working class interests, their readiness to go after those who have the least power to fight, and also not to even consider a wealth tax as an alternative to these horrendous cuts. Younger reps and members don't have the same level of affiliation to Labour or loyalty to Labour that some of our older activists have. And because recent elections brought forward a whole layer of younger reps, it certainly feels like Unite is strongly positioned to disaffiliate and to consider alternative political representation. The next step in terms of Unite would be, we would have to call a rules conference, and whether this was done as the scheduled rules conference, although we're not exactly sure of the date of that, over the next year or so, we could also call an emergency conference, and that would have to be something that the executive would agree on, the executive would discuss and agree on, and actually decide. But a lot of it at the moment is hanging obviously on what happens with the Birmingham bin strikes and whether the Labour Council does go ahead with the with the fire and rehire. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Suze, and thanks in particular for keeping well to time. That's obviously all those years of making conference contributions and red and orange lights coming on in front of you, no doubt. Well, the point that's raised there is that it is possible in an affiliated union to raise a change in policy, though putting that then into effect may require rules revisions, and there may be, as has been said, time before that can actually be put forward. But we'll hear quite a few speakers in the next sort of half an hour before I start moving to people from the floor, from both affiliated and non-affiliated unions, because there are different strategies that can be moved there. Can I just repeat the point that I do see the odd one person putting a hand up, but I literally can only see 5 people at the top of my screen at the moment out of 890 of you. So the chat will be a much better idea, and there are messages coming through there. Can I also just say, I forgot to announce it at the beginning, that I have enabled live transcription. So if anyone would benefit from the use of that, they can enable it within their own, or rather on their own device. Right, the next speaker I'd like to call is Marco Tassai. Marco is a member of the Executive Council, the National Executive of UCU. The University and College Union isn't affiliated to the Labour Party, but it also had a conference recently and took a policy decision, which Marco is going to outline, which is very germane to the project we're talking about tonight. So Marco, the floor's yours.
Yeah, hi everyone, can you hear me?
We can indeed.
Yeah, okay, well, it's good to be here. Yes, my name's Marco Tezay, and I'm UCU branch chair at West London College, and also a UK elected member of the National Executive. So, well, I'm personally very excited about this event. In my eyes, it's the inevitable outcome of the events of the last weeks, with the Birmingham bin workers' strikes acting as the biggest catalyzing event of them all. It's so clear now, isn't it? Not only that Starmer's Labour is hell-bent on making workers pay for British capitalism's crisis, but also that we need a far more drastic solution than just protesting and striking. I'd like to draw your attention to one of the policies that was adopted by my union at its annual congress back in May. I feel is completely integral to today's focus of discussion, the creation of a new anti-austerity, anti-war party rooted in the trade unions. The resolution in the motion I moved there on behalf of my college is an example of what trade unionists can fight for to help put unions center stage in the launch of an alternative political voice to Labour. And I would encourage other unions to follow our example with similar motions. I'm going to read out the motion. And by the way, before moving it, and both in my local branch and at Congress, I was convinced the majority of members would find it too radical. I was completely wrong. The motion carried comfortably in both places. This has taught me that if, as a union rep, you sense a demand which isn't yet being articulated, you shouldn't hold back. Put it into words yourself and offer it up to members for their evaluation. So the motion goes like this. Enough is enough. Post-16 education needs new political representation. This Congress notes, 1, the funding crisis across all sectors of post-16 education. 2, UCU research found a 4.5% increase in corporation tax would raise £17 billion, enough to inject more money into further and higher education and end tuition fees. And 3, Labour's clear signalling its intention for further austerity, not funding. This Congress believes, 1, post-16 educators need political representatives that back our union's policies, including for fully funded free education for all. And 2, it is time for UCU and the broader trade union movement to look for an alternative political voice to Labour. This Congress resolves, 1, to invite Jeremy Corbyn, the Independent Alliance in Parliament, and other pro-worker MPs to attend our National Executive for discussion about how they can support our union's fight for post-16 education funding in Parliament. And 2, to encourage UCU members to stand in elections, linking up with other trade unionists to fight for our union's policies. So there you have it in embryo. Not just the urgent need for an alternative political representation, but also crucially for that representation to come directly from ourselves, the trade unions. So we now have both those calls enshrined in policy in UCU. But the question is, as well as the challenge, what should we do now to ensure that that resolution is put into practice? Clearly, we have to put persistent pressure on our General Secretary and the National Executive. It is vital that in the next months, UCU branches across the country insist on the implementation of that policy. Local reps and activists have to take the lead in this. And if any of you are at this meeting, I invite you to get in touch with me. Discussion of the policy needs to take place in your branches and local resolutions adopted to ensure the leadership does not ignore this important grassroots call for alternative workers' representation. Solidarity for a new Workers' Party.
Smashing. Thanks very much indeed, Mark. That's much appreciated. And to repeat the point that Mark is making, that as an unaffiliated union, it is possible to build relationships with the independent group of MPs and the way Starmer is going, that may well be a bigger group in the days and months ahead, given the fact he's now suspended from the Parliamentary Labour Party another group of MPs for their actions in trying to protect welfare benefits. That it is possible to take action in an unaffiliated union in order to build those relationships with the group that's operating in Parliament. That group, as I say, excuse me, led by Jeremy Corbyn, which gives me the hook to hang the news that Jeremy is now only 15, possibly 20 minutes away. The material, the things he was raising in Parliament is managing to do. So we will have Jeremy, and I will then call people who are indicating. I'm getting one or two messages personally and privately that the chat is not working. That's why people are raising their hands. Can I say again, I can only see 6 people out of 892 on the top of my screen. So people raising their hands, I won't see them. However, I can see 20 messages in the chat. So please use the chat if you wish to make a point or ask a question or indicate that you'd like to speak. Having had a speaker from one unaffiliated trade union, that's the UCU. And by the way, a couple of hours ago when I did a last check, we had nearly 90 members of the UCU registered to come to this meeting. So that's certainly one group of trade unionists that after this meeting is over, hopefully will get together to pursue within their own union structures a strategy to get the idea of a new workers' party higher and higher up the agenda. But I'll call another speaker from another unaffiliated union, this time the National Education Union, the NEU, and this will be Sheila Caffrey, who, as I say, is a member of the NEU NEC. So Sheila, are you there?
I am, yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Dave, and thank you to everyone else who's been involved in calling this meeting, because there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that having a new party for us is an absolute necessity. So like Dave said, I'm on the national executive of the National Education Union, the NEU, from Bristol. And, you know, all we're seeing at the moment is education workers in nurseries, schools and colleges are struggling. They have, under the Tory rule, faced attack after attack, cutting pensions, holding down pay, forcing through academies and privatisation, as well as pushing an ideological curriculum that is simply just wrong and inappropriate for our children and communities. And we were told it was going to be better under Labour. So what have we got? We've got school cuts and closures left, right and centre, especially across London. No push to allow schools to return to local authority control from academies. Pay restraint for teachers and support staff with cast iron promises that funding will not cover the staffing costs, forcing schools to choose if they are to pay staff properly, they will need to make cuts elsewhere. The decimation of funding, forcing maintained nursery schools and children's centres to close and trapping our youngest children into private childcare. And changes to the curriculum, attacking and isolating trans and non-binary young people that would make the Tories proud. So for education workers, blue Tories or red Tories, they just need to go. We need to look at how our voices, needs and wishes for the education of the next generation can be heard in Parliament. I, along with others on the National Executive, have put forward the need to speak to all the MPs currently not part of Labour or Tories, to form an independent group voice, to work with the NEU and education workers to push what is needed loudly and clearly in Westminster. Unfortunately, not all of the leadership of the NEU are confident that this is the way to go, and have this year entered a partnership agreement with Starmer's Labour and CEOs of large multi-academy trusts. Obviously not the people who will have the same hopes and wishes for our children or their futures. This is not the mood of the rank and file trade union members that I speak to, though. They see what this government is doing to decimate education, our communities, and the whole of our public services. So we need to create a grassroots movement in the NEU to support those on the leadership who are currently afraid to put their heads above the Labour parapet. In September, I will circulate a model motion to pass in NEU branches, similar to the one that Marco's just mentioned passed in the UCU this week, to work with those independent or Green MPs who are willing to stand up for workers. So if you're in the NEU, please do reach out to me or look out for my emails and messages so we together can support the NEU leadership in reaching out and creating a political voice for education. But even better than just having a group of sympathetic MPs to actually advance the idea that the NEU could be one of the many unions in education and across all sectors and workplaces that could work with other trade unions to start to build a party that is based on the unions, not just spearheaded by those politicians already there, but one that is built in our schools and colleges, built in our local communities, and built in our unions, to have strong voices and to show the collective power of trade unions at the ballot boxes, to show the needs of the whole of the working class, and by having the collective voices and strength of us, 6 million strong, to transform the lives of the millions rather than the millionaires. So solidarity to everyone here tonight, and I look forward to working with you to build the party that can advance the needs of all of the working class. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sheila. That was Sheila Caffrey from the NEC of the NEU. And just one of the points there to reiterate from what Sheila has said. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have a 97% attendance at tonight's meeting of trade unionists. This has got to be the most concentrated group of trade unionists at 895 at the moment for some time. In the registration, I did ask everybody if it would be okay to contact them after the meeting was over with news of further initiatives, and about 90% have said yes. I'm not 100% sure, though, that everybody who answered no really meant it, since one of the people who answered no is extremely well known to me and not 100 miles away from contributing here so far tonight. So I will ask everybody again, because if you've answered yes, then this is exactly the sort of thing we could do. With about 90 to 100 NEU members on the call, hopefully Sheila could circulate that model resolution to all NEU members who've indicated that they want to know how to take the campaign forward. And that would mean that a number of divisions would be reached in the union, which wouldn't otherwise happen. So that's the sort of thing we hope to organise after tonight's meeting. A couple of the bits of news before I call in a speaker from Unison, and that's to say that I'm getting individual messages saying wanting to enable the AI companion and recording. I have to confess, I don't know what the AI companion is going to be able to add to the meeting, but on the grounds that it's one more complication, I'm saying no. In terms of recording, the meeting is being recorded. That's part of the reason that we have this spotlight approach, rather than showing everybody's faces who might be, say, 50 on a screen without asking their permission. So the recording will be available after the meeting. In fact, it will be available almost immediately on Facebook. If you go to my Facebook politician page, the live streaming that we're taking place is being recorded by Facebook and should be available shortly after the end of the meeting. But the hope is that we can take some extracts from this and turn it into a shorter, perhaps a YouTube video, to get it out to new people. As I said earlier on, Jeremy is hopefully going to be here in about 10 minutes, and I'll call him when he does come on. But Zara Sultana has joined us, and I'm sure everybody is aware of the announcement that Zara made a couple of weeks ago when she announced that she was leaving the Labour Party. Just one tiny historical footnote. Zara represents Coventry South here in Coventry, which is the same constituency I was the MP for 30 years ago when I was expelled. And we will call Zara into the discussion shortly once I've got this first 3 or 4 scheduled speakers from the different unions that I promised I would call early on. So the 1 or 2 of you sent messages reminding me that Zara was here. I've spotted the messages now, and we'll certainly invite Zara into the discussion shortly. The next speaker, however, is going to be Marion Lloyd. I did say from Unison, but actually Marion is from PCS, again a member of the National Executive, as I think all the speakers we've had so far are elected representatives at that level. So if Marion is ready, can I introduce Marion Lloyd from PCS?
Thank you. Have I gone?
No, you're here.
No, I'm here. It's all right. My laptop's playing out. Well, thank you, first of all, so much for inviting me to speak. And I think since we've seen the announcements from Zara and Jeremy, there's been a sort of an air of excitement amongst PCS activists in particular throughout the union. Our union as well is not affiliated to a political party. It never has been. And I think if we raised the sorts of discussions that we had in the 80s about whether or not we'd affiliate to Labour, we'd now be laughed out of court because of others have already set out all the hopes amongst a layer of PCS members, not many of us, I have to say, but there were a layer of members and reps who hoped that Labour would be different. Then clearly that has changed. And just the attacks that we're coming under inside the civil service since the outcome of the general election last year feels very similar to what it was like under God knows how many decades of the Tories. We've got massive cuts being announced. We've got pay restraint again, where pay is being limited if they get their way to 3.25%. We've got our private sector members moving into action on pay and conditions, many of them paid the minimum wage, and there is no move at all from the government to make good on its manifesto promise to insource. What do they say? The biggest level of insourcing there'll be in decades. And as of now, there's been no move to engage civil service trade unions to look at how we can break down the years of privatisation that has taken place throughout the private sector, at the detriment of all of us. And I don't need to explain the attacks on the benefits and so on and so forth, which our members deliver, the attacks on child support, our members deliver, and notwithstanding the disgusting decisions that Labour has made since it's been in power, that also has an impact and consequence on our members, who are not only claiming both sides of the counter, many of them, but are also responsible for delivering government policy, which of course many of our members do not support and actively oppose. In terms of the political edge, just very quickly, our union has always taken the position that we will support politicians that support us and support the policies that we stand for, no matter what that is, whether it be international policies or whether it be those that are closer to home in terms of pay and conditions. And that was overwhelmingly supported in a membership ballot nearly 13 years ago, and that has been reaffirmed at many, many conferences since then, without exception, of course, giving a lot of support to Jeremy Corbyn and his manifesto, which I think was the key question, was his manifesto, when that came to pass a couple of years ago. And of course, many reps now are seeing that the promises that have come from government that they will start to treat civil service workers with respect is absolute rubbish. And as I say, very little difference in terms of what we've suffered under the Tories for God knows how long, including some of the most appalling attacks on equality, and especially the question of trans rights, which filtered down through the civil service, through the anti-woke activities of the Tories. But frankly, there's been very little to rectify and rebalance that. So the left inside PCS are putting a motion to the National Executive Committee this week, which basically and quickly sets out all the things that we're discussing here, and also says, you know, it is vital now that we look at if and how we can develop a programme around which people can unite, with the potential that I think we're all grasping here now as to whether or not we're in a position to set up a new workers' party, because many, many people think that is absolutely vital now. And what we're asking the NEC to do is to look at the parliamentary group that we currently work with inside our union, to see what their voting record is on all those issues that I don't need to repeat again, but the benefits stuff, the two-child benefit cap, etc., to see what their record is, and to look, if possible, and if required, I hope it's not, to reconstitute that body based on MPs that truly do support our policies. But more importantly, in many ways, to invite people like Jeremy Corbyn, Zara and so on to come to the NEC and discuss if and how we can influence the potential developments that the meeting tonight could produce. But also, thirdly, to work with other areas. We've heard from the comrade from Unite, we've heard from the comrade from UCU and NEU, also how our union, PCS, can work together with other unions to develop the relevant programme and to discuss the issues that we all face. Given the makeup of the PCS NEC currently, I don't know whether that motion will be carried. I think it's unlikely. But what I can give a guarantee about is that the broad left will be discussing this issue in the next fortnight and thinking through, in the context of what happens at the NEC this week, if and how we can engage with a broader layer of our reps. We've already advertised the meeting in many quarters tonight, and it's had a really positive response. But if and how we can develop this work inside our union, working up and linking up with other unions now. This is way over time. I am absolutely thrilled to bits this meeting is taking place, as are many of the comrades that I work with inside my own union. And I think now anything is possible, because we have got to defeat the right, whether it's Reform, the far right, or some of these monsters inside the Labour Party and the politics that they stand for, and build support for a proper socialist programme which tackles the issues that all of our working class members and communities are facing. So solidarity to everybody, and look forward to working with you all in the weeks and months to come. And thank you for listening.
That's great. Thanks very much indeed, Marion. And again, significant points for those people here today from unaffiliated unions. And actually, that's the majority of trade unions in the country. There's 48 unions affiliated to the TUC. Only 11 are affiliated to the Labour Party. The other 37 are not. And I think I said earlier on, we've got, I think it's just over 30 of the 48 unions, with at least some people here tonight, some in significant numbers, particularly, as I said, Unison and Unite. But I think Marion raised a number of ideas that people could consider raising in unaffiliated unions. Question of inviting Jeremy, of inviting Zara, of inviting the independent MPs, and building those links now as the debate and discussion takes place about what structures, what policies, how a party should be formed, what it should be called, and so on. I've got two more speakers from my original list to try and get a range of speakers across a number of different unions, then hopefully Jeremy will arrive, and then I'll hopefully look towards bringing in one or two more people from the floor. So I did say earlier on I've got a speaker hopefully from Unison, and now I have. So I'm going to call April Ashley. April's recently been re-elected for the female black members seat on the Unison NEC, and has served on that body for many years. That union is facing a general secretary election, and I think and I hope what April's going to refer to is how we could raise this idea of a new workers' party so it's part of the debate around that election process. But anyway, April, over to you.
Hey, thank you, Dave, and thanks for inviting me to the meeting. Can you hear me okay?
We can indeed.
Great. And so I think, like a lot of the other trade unions have said, for Unison members, and certainly for Unison activists, the time has come for a new workers' party. We've had 14 years of Tory austerity that decimated local government, and I think local government has been the worst, the hardest hit in the public sector. And, you know, everyone was relieved when the Tories were kicked out last year. However, there was no enthusiasm to vote for Labour even before the election, because at last year's Unison conference, we had a Labour MP come to speak at our local government conference, and she just said, well, there's going to be no cavalry coming to rescue local government. And so they will do nothing for us. And so many Unison members are, you know, very bitter about Labour. We know that Labour MPs would even go on the picket lines to support workers in the last couple of years of the Unison, of a trade union and the strike action. And so although Unison is affiliated to Labour, and Unison boasts that there are 120 Unison supported MPs that are Unison members, and that Unison is the biggest trade union group of MPs. However, only 16% of members are affiliated to the Labour link, and they can't get members to affiliate. It's a very tight body, and you know they don't advertise that fact. But activists were even less impressed this year. And we'll just talk about the mood of the conference that we've had this year. It was very anti-Labour, not as far as Unite has gone, but they're very anti-Labour because, of course, we know the attacks of the winter fuel allowance, fuel payments, just tacked on disabled workers, not lifting the two-child benefit cap, but members were particularly also bitter about WASPing. And as everybody mentioned before, the Birmingham bin strike. And of course, this is a consequence of the funding crisis in local government. With 4.3 billion, there's a funding gap in local government, and that is a consequence. And that is why the Birmingham bin workers have been attacked. And the actions of the strike baker, Angela Rayner, and the Labour councillors, you know, people were, very angry, and they gave full solidarity to the Birmingham bin workers because we know it's about the funding crisis in local government. And when speakers exposed the role of Labour and opposed them and said we needed a new workers' party, then everybody applauded, young workers especially. And the activists, one activist actually said, well, we can spend the whole debate just about attacking Labour, but we have to move on to the next motion, because that was so much the anti-Labour mood at the conference. Even our General Secretary, Christina McAnear, right-wing unfortunately General Secretary of Unison, had to reflect the anti-Labour mood at conference. And of course, she opposes the Welfare Rights Bill and the Immigration Bill and all the other attacks of our workers. And the only thing she could point to was the weak Employment Relations Bill, saying it was transformative, but we've still got no date when they're going to repeal the Trade Union Act 2016 and remove the 50% threshold for strike action. We don't know when that's going to be removed, and that's, unfortunately, it's been kicked into the long grass. Unison said it will be removed later this year because it does have negative consequences on our local government pay, on industrial action ballots and health workers ballots, it does have a negative consequences. But now it's been kicked to into the long grass. Now, as Dave said, there's a campaign for the new General Secretary this year, and it has already kicked off. And there's a rally tonight for the left. Andrew Egan rally tonight, who's standing against Christine McAnear. And one of her election manifesto promises is to review Unison's relationship with the Labour Party. That's what she's going to do. She's going to review that relationship. But as I have said to her, and we've said in a Time for Real Change sort of rally in Liverpool at the conference, that she needs to do more than review the relationship with Labour. Unison needs to do more than that, because the Labour link is very tightly controlled on that. She needs to be campaigning for a new Workers' Party. That should be part of her manifesto. That should be part of her discussion. So she said that she hasn't thought about it, but she will look at that. But that's what we need to say in her manifesto if she wants to become General Secretary of Unison. We know the Unison right wing, unfortunately, is still in control of Unison for this year. They're not going to do anything to review that relationship. They're very happy with relationships, and all they can talk about is the Employment Relations Bill, how fantastic that is, and how great Labour is, how great Angela Rayner is, and everything like that. That is their position on Labour. So Andrew Egan must say that we're going to be campaigning and for a new Workers' Party. That should be part of that manifesto, and those discussions have begun. So that's what we want to look for. So as I said, that the mood of the conference, the mood of young workers, very, very much anti-Labour on that. And, you know, I do think the campaign for a new Workers' Party, looking at a new Workers' Party led by the trade unions and involved in the trade unions, you know, it is a time that most Unison members and activists, its time has come. And that's what we'll be campaigning for as we go forward. And we said there's quite a few Unison activists on the call. And I do believe that you know, the time has come for that for this now. And I think everybody's excited, enthusiastic about this, and you know, looking forward to this campaign. Thank you.
Thanks very much, April. I did neglect to say at the beginning that April actually got elected with 28,792 votes, and an emphatic result. And thanks ever so much from April for those contributions. One thing that did occur to me as she was speaking is that there's actually, I think, 116 Labour MPs who received individual or constituency level donations from my union, Unite. But when Rachel Maskell put down the amendment in the Commons to try and block the welfare disability cuts, only about 30 of those MPs who received money from Unite backed her amendment. I think that needs raising with those individuals, that if they're happy taking union money, they should listen carefully when unions are running campaigns in defence of jobs, wages, conditions and welfare benefits. And that's the case in other unions as well. I've got two more speakers, then I'm told Jeremy will be with us, and they complete what I was trying to do at the beginning, which is to have a range of speakers across unions. Now I'm going to have a range of speakers across countries, because Katrine Williams is coming on, in fact has come on the call. Katrine is a member of the TUSC Cymru General Council, the General Council in Wales, but she's going to tell us about an initiative that Cardiff Trades Council has taken. And part of the reason for this is I've had a couple of messages both tonight and before the meeting from officers of trades councils saying, what can trades councils do to host debates on this issue? Well, Katrina's has got a prime example she's going to tell us all about.
Thanks, Dave. And obviously, the context in Wales is that obviously Labour has been in power for a whole number of years, not just the past year. And when we had the strike wave of public sector workers earlier on a couple of years ago, public sector workers didn't have a good word to say about their employer, the Welsh Government. So there's been a lot of anger in terms of the paltry pay rises over a number of years, and people have had to fight for that. And obviously we're going into the next round of pay ballots in terms of that. So that's a context in terms of how we're operating in Wales as well. We took the decision at our Trades Council to write to all the Labour MPs in the city where our Trades Council is based to actually ask them what they were going to be doing about the benefit cuts legislation. We managed to get one reply out of 4 MPs, given that we represent tens of thousands of workers across the city, which was very poor. And the response was also very poor as well, in terms of extolling the virtues of the full benefit cuts bill, not even the watered down version, about how amazing that was. And obviously in Wales, we've got a significant number of people who receive PIP and a significant number of people who receive the health component of universal credit as well. So there's enormous anger, enormous concern over the attacks on disabled people. We've also had a very bitter dispute in terms of with our local council, where the Unite local government branch has had a long dispute, in the bins, still is going through a lot of bullying, and it is dealing with ongoing issues in the council as well, in terms of fighting for decent conditions for workers. And obviously we've also been representing and supporting a SAC trade unionists in the city as well. So that's the context in which we met in June. We had a meeting in June. The delegates to our Trades Council were absolutely appalled with the shocking response we had, actually talking the benefits of taking tens of thousands of pounds off disabled people. And you know, this is a year where we're facing the Senedd elections next spring, and you know, obviously it's time to put maximum pressure on politicians as well, and you'd expect them to be listening to trade unionists. So we've decided to take forward the initiative, actually look at organising a conference to discuss the crisis in political representation for the working class in Wales, really trying to take the bull by the horns and actually get the trade union movement to give a lead in terms of what is really lacking in Wales. Labour's vote is collapsing completely in Wales. The projections and the polls are showing that they're likely to get the third vote after Plaid Cymru and reform in Wales. And you know, so it's an opportunity for them to listen to what we've got to say, but also to put forward our demands of what we want in terms of political representation for our movement. And clearly there isn't a party that is actually representing ordinary working class people at the moment. In fact, one of the local government branches in our city polled their members and asked which their members would be voting Labour in the next elections, and 95% of people that responded to the branch said they wouldn't be voting Labour. So you know, clearly there's a real need and a real importance to fill the vacuum that's existing, and we need to put forward our demands. And we don't just need to put forward, as TUSC Cymru is putting forward, demands that Labour are already doing. We need to be putting forward demands that we need in Wales in terms of addressing poverty, addressing the lack of healthcare, addressing the fact that we need to invest in preventative healthcare, invest in support for people with mental health issues, to actually address the crisis in terms of the working class in our communities as well. So, you know, all of these things, real fighting demands that the trade union movement can unite behind. So, you know, we're really proud. We're generating a lot of enthusiasm across all the trades councils that are coming together to also sponsor the conference together with us, and we're getting union branches as well on board with us. And I think we're going to have a very good debate. We've invited Labour to send a representative to defend their record in Wales, and you know, to make sure that you know, they're there to listen to what trade unionists in Wales have to say. So, you know, watch this space, because I think it's a very exciting initiative, and I think it'll take forward the call that we actually do need change in Wales. We need you know, a real voice for working class people. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Katrine. That's much appreciated. And in particular, this news about the conference in the autumn of trades councils, local TUCs, union branches and so on in Wales in the run-up to the Synod elections next year. And just to make the point, in addition to Wales, there's also the Scottish Parliament elections next year. And in England, there's twice as many council seats up next May as there were this May. And in some areas, like London boroughs and in Birmingham, for example, it's all the councillors that'll be up, not just 1/3 as it is in some councils. And Birmingham have moved, like London boroughs, into 4 yearly elections. So the councillors elected in a number of these metropolitan areas next May will be in place in the run-up and beyond the next general election. And if the pattern this year, where Reform UK gained almost 700 extra councillors, is increased next year, they could be sitting on 2,000 councillors with the resources and the platform that gives them, unless we start discussing early, challenging on an anti-austerity, anti-war platform, working class candidates against the establishment parties. Now, Jeremy has joined us, I'm pleased to say, and as I explained earlier on to quite a few of you, there were 2 or 3 additional statements which were added to the procedures and business of the Commons this afternoon, and one in particular on the Middle East. I know Jeremy wanted to be there for, but I'm grateful that he's managed to rush out and get to us. Just to let him know, we've got at the moment 900 people on the Zoom meeting. I'm not sure how many hundreds extra are on the Facebook group. But Jeremy, you don't need any introduction. The floor is going to be yours as how you see trade unionists and trade unions playing a role in the development and the winning support for a new working class party.
Dave, thanks ever so much, and thank you so much for inviting me onto the call. And again, apologies I couldn't get on till now, but I'm sure you'd understand the reason why. There were a lot of statements today. The first one was on the water industry, where we're apparently having a new super regulator that's going to regulate all the other regulators and out-regulate all the other regulators. The one bit that isn't changing is the principle of people taking profits and money out of water rather than putting services in. And I made that point and said that the public ownership of the water industry was absolutely crucial. The minister claimed it would cost 100 billion. We own it, estimates it as being 15 billion pounds. I think it is right that we campaign on public ownership, and that is something that we've all got to be doing, and that's why I was in for that statement. The second statement was on the, or third statement rather, was on the Middle East, which again, I made the point there that I've just come back from Bogota with the Hague Group. This is a group of nations that want to support the International Court of Justice, want to support the International Criminal Court, want to end all arms supplies to Israel and all facilitation of arms supplies to Israel and all acts going into Israel that can further their power over both Gaza and the West Bank. I asked the British government if they would join the Hague Group. I made that point very, very strongly. And I want to say thank you to those delegates in Unite the Union last week that managed to get a good policy statement through, which supports those members who will refuse to load or send arms or parts to F-35 jets to Israel, which will support their continued occupation. And so all these things are very important. And I'll run through a few issues, then come on to the issues of how we sustain and develop a new party and how we make our case for doing that. The moment workers' rights have been under attack in lots of ways, and it's getting a workers' voice heard in lots of ways that's also important. So go back to Palestine, for example. On the 4th and 5th of September, the Peace and Justice Project are holding an alternative public inquiry into arms trade with Israel and the policies of the British government. Ideal opportunity for workers in the arms industry or workers in Unite to say what their views are and say how they would like to see an alternative develop. These are not easy or simple questions, but it's something we have to be working on. Public spending, despite everything that Rachel Reeves says, is actually causing a greater level of austerity in most government departments. Even in parts of the NHS, there are cuts going on. And in joint commissioning, for example, in my own area, it's been cut by 50%. And we are then, that's joint commissioning between the NHS and local government. And that means that there are longer waiting lists in some areas and a huge vacancy factor, which means that those working within the NHS, as in education and many others, are actually working very long hours and often working unpaid to assist with shift handovers. And so the issues of public spending are crucial. And so this Friday, we have another mass picket for the Birmingham bin strikers. I will be there on Friday morning in Birmingham, supporting all of you on the Birmingham bin strike picket lines. And my colleague in the Independent Alliance Group, Ayub Khan, will be there with me, and we'll be making the case for support for the Birmingham bin workers. One, because they deserve support and no worker should be faced with falling wages. But secondly, perhaps more significantly in the longer term, if the government is able to get away with appointing commissioners in Birmingham whose job appears to be to make workers pay for the financial problems of the local authority rather than dealing with the issue of what the financial problems actually are, then it will be tried elsewhere. Commissioners will be sent into other authorities and will have exactly the same issues. And so this, to me, is something that's very, very important and very, very significant. And I've been very impressed with the work I've heard of Birmingham bin strikers at many rallies around the country, including a fantastic event that the Merseyside councillors, the Liverpool Independents, put on in Liverpool last month. And so it is those issues that are important. Now, we've had a workers' rights bill that's gone through Parliament, and at one level, yes, it's welcome because it does improve rights at work. It does give greater rights of trade union membership and so on. Yeah, fine. I supported it because there was no alternative on offer. But I also supported attempts within it to try to bring in sectoral bargaining, to bring in the right to take sympathetic action to people taking action in other places. And so there is a need for a sustained and long-term campaign to improve rights at work and improve trade union rights, albeit even just within the ambit of the ILO convention would make things radically very, very different. But it's not just the wages we get at work. It's not just the rights we have at work. It's not just the position of our unions that's important. It's the level of inequality, injustice, and poverty in our society that has to be addressed. We have record numbers of rough sleeping homeless in our society. We have a mental health crisis that I haven't seen in my lifetime before. And we have a poverty crisis of particularly children in large families living in the most desperate poverty. And so Starmer's government has resolutely refused to lift the two-child benefit cap. Lifting that cap alone would make a massive difference to a very large number of children's lives, and it would cost about £1.3 billion per year. They're proposing to spend 13 billion a year more on arms expenditure by increasing defense expenditure. So there's a pretty obvious parallel there. Likewise, their attempt to take 5 billion out of the personal independence payments budget backfired badly. They got a huge public reaction against it and ended up more or less, but only more or less, dropping that policy for the immediate, but having a review for the longer term. My suggestion, and the suggestion put forward by the Independent Alliance, the 5 of us, 5 MPs, more than Reform, put forward, was that there should be a review of benefit policy in relation to people with disability. I agree, but it should be led by disabled persons organisations who can describe to us the problems of social care, the problems of poverty, the problems of accessibility, and yes, quite possibly the need for more public spending and public investment in it to give people with disabilities a decent chance and a role within our society. And so that is one example. There are many other examples of people that have been let down, such as the WASPI women, who were promised with lots of photographs with every Labour front bencher about how they were going to carry out their policies on WASPI women, and then actually didn't do it, and quite specifically said they won't do it. They've made their choice, spending more on weapons, more on arms, and an aggressive foreign policy rather than a foreign policy of peace. And the rest of the community is paying the price through cuts in public expenditure and specifically cuts in disability benefits for the very poorest people within our society. And so we need an alternative political voice. The 5 of us in the Independent Alliance are there in Parliament. Zara has resigned from the Labour Party and is with us in the Independent Alliance, making that case and that voice. I think we need an alternative political voice. We need an alternative political party that's out there and very clear. And many of us, me included, are consulting very, very rapidly with a lot of people on basic but general issues. One, the politics of the party. It must be about peace. It must be about redistribution. It must be about workers' rights. It must be about environmental sustainability. It must be about public ownership and investment in housing. But above all, it's got to be a political organization that is rooted within our communities, rooted in the democratic activities of people in their communities, fighting for schools, fighting for nurseries, fighting for buses, all the things that we all spend our time campaigning on, and linked up to workers' rights. So there needs to be the voice of community independence all around the country, the voice of local communities all around the country, the voice of trade union members all around the country, and the voice of the political left all over the country that can come together on this simple, fundamental formula of how we achieve these things. We need to create a sense of hope within our society. I led the Labour Party from 2015 to 2020, and I'm very grateful for the fantastic work and support that I got from a lot of people. We put forward manifestos in 17 and 19 that were very good, not totally perfect. They weren't totally the finished article, but I think everyone would agree, had they been brought into operation, it would have made a fantastic difference to the lives of millions of people. That attracted 600,000 people into Labour Party membership. Biggest it had ever been, and probably about 3 times the size of what it is at the present time. And so there is a thirst out there, as we've picked up in the Peace and Justice Project, of all of us have picked up, Zara included, on our email responses to the idea of forming a new political party. That party has to give hope to people and bring about unity to people. Dave just made a very good point. Reform gained support in the last local elections. Reform have a group in Parliament that, when they turn up, occasionally say something usually obnoxious and usually quite obscene. They're not a working class party. They're not a party for the many. They're not a party for social justice. They're a party that, in a classic sense, seeks to blame the most vulnerable minorities in our society for all the problems. It's classic. Blame the poor, blame the immigrant, blame the refugee, always blame the victim of a system that is horrible and vile. No refugee underfunded a school, no refugee closed a hospital, no refugee denied a child the amount of food they need. It is an unjust system of taxation and distribution of wealth that created all of that. And so we fight back against reform by giving opportunity, hope, and voice to people. Giving that voice and that hope is what we're all about. And that is what I'm determined to do. So let's not be frightened of reform. Let's be strong, be hopeful, be optimistic, and above all, be inclusive of how we bring all of our communities together to achieve what we have to within our society to bring about that change. I'm hoping we can get through this process very, very quickly so that we can do an establishment and a launch very, very quickly, so that well in advance of next year's local elections, we will have in place an organisation that supports local campaigns, supports independents in their campaigns, and comes together under, if you like, a common badge, common emblem, common symbol, common umbrella. But above all, there's nearly 1,000 people on this call, 1,000 people with 1,000 ideas. They'll all be good ones. They'll all be inclusive. They'll all be determined, and they'll all, above all, bring about a change in our society. So let's not be depressed, even though there's plenty to be depressed about. Stand with the oppressed, not the oppressor around the world. Stand with the people of Palestine, not with those that oppress them. And stand with the people in our country that need our support. And that is what our new endeavour, our new party will achieve. And I look forward to working with all of you to achieve that. Dave, thank you very much for inviting me, and please do send your ideas in to Dave, to me, or anybody else, so that we can distill all this lot together, then put forward a credible plan of action that I hope every single one of the people on this call will join in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy. And given the pressure of business this afternoon, this evening in the chamber, thanks very much for rushing over and making sure you were able to contribute, and the message that you gave. It's much appreciated. We've not got much time left, but I'm determined to try and get 3 or 4 more speakers in, and I'll reserve a minute at the end for housekeeping myself. I'm going to call the regional organiser for London Transport from the RMT because the RMT has a number of badges it could wear, one of which was it moved the resolution which resulted in February 1900 the formation of the Labour Party itself, though then it was called the Society of Railway Servants, if I remember its title. So Jared Wood I'll call in next. Then I'm going to give some time to Zara Sultana MP. A brief comments then from Nancy Taff, who also spoke at the Unite conference, which I think is possibly the most significant union development of the past 2 or 3 weeks in terms of challenging affiliation to Labour. And then to finish us off as only he can, I'm going to call Ian Hodson, who is the president of the Bakers Union, and then give my abject apologies to everybody that I haven't managed to call in, but I'll explain at the end what we can do about that. Jared, the floor is yours for 3 or 4 minutes.
Hi, Dave. Thanks. I should just make the point that I'm speaking in a personal capacity. I am the regional organiser of the London Transport region, but I'm speaking in a personal capacity to this meeting. I've just come straight from a meeting with some of our cleaning members who work for a charming company called Bidvest, who do the cleaning on the Docklands Light Railway. And in response to a pay claim we put in, which included an element where we demanded sick pay, they wrote to us and they said that they were prepared to consider 1 week of sick pay in cases where someone has a terminal diagnosis. And I think, that is, it takes a lot to shock these days, but seeing that on a headed piece of notepaper, really proud. Oh, look, we're offering this. That is, well, it shows, frankly, the terminal nature of the Labour Party's politics at this time. These people are contracted by a Labour mayor. They're working under a Labour government, and that's the response of a company. We're still waiting for SSP to be brought forwards. These people at the moment get nothing for 3 days, and then they get SSP. You can't live on that. These low-paid workers need proper contractual sick pay. So that's just another example of what's going on. But look, I'll just use what little time I've got to talk about what we do from here, because The RMT, of course, was involved in TUSC. We had a position on the steering committee of the Trade Union Socialist Coalition. I think, frankly, the fact that that was a more that process was extremely prolonged. We didn't get other trade unions to formally back the process, and I think that led to a degree of demoralisation in the RMT, and I think that's why perhaps there's not as much involvement from some members in our union as there are from other unions at this time. It ebbs and flows, but I think that will turn around very quickly. You know, Dave mentioned the resolution in 1900. You know, our forerunners, the ASRS, they drew the conclusion after events like the Taff Vale judgment, where the courts ruled that the rail union could be held liable for the profits of the bosses if they went on strike. You know, that led our members the members of our predecessor organisation in 1900 to the conclusion that there has to be, hand in hand with an industrial fight, there has to be a political fight. An industrial fight alone cannot win lasting change, lasting social change, which workers need. And that was the conclusion they drew. And I think that the moves towards a new party that Jeremy and Zara have outlined is going to give new opportunities to us within the RMT to discuss this, and I am personally quite confident that the situation will be quite changed as a result of that. I think we need a focal point. We need a party. We need something that people can identify with. But with that, you know, I would say to people in the trade union movement, don't outsource your politics to a party. The trade unions have to be absolutely integral to the development of that new party. The power in society is in production. The power in society is in our ability to make things, in the production, distribution and exchange of wealth, and that takes place in workplaces, and we have to control those workplaces, and we have to build a new working class party in those workplaces to be controlled, yes, in the community, but crucially in those workplaces. So thank you very much to Jeremy and Zara for this particular initiative, and I hope that we'll be able to build support for that within our union and across the trade union movement.
Thanks very much, Jared. That's much appreciated. Nicely to time as well. I want to call Zara in next, but I just want to make the point that I've met a couple of times, just in case anybody is leaving in the next few minutes. This is the first meeting which has brought together over 1,000 active trade unionists who want to play a role in developing a new party. It doesn't end here. This is just kick-starting it. We need more meetings in local areas and in individual trade unions. And I hope if you're thinking of planning those, you'll look to Zara and you'll look to Jeremy and invite them to those meetings. You'll get a bigger attendance if you do, and try and plan them like the Welsh comrades have announced tonight that they're doing over the next few months. And let's make sure that the people we've brought here tonight can play a major role in how things go forward. With that, making sure that that's clear, Zara, the floor is yours. Need to push a button to
Thank
unmute.
you. I was just waiting for permission to unmute. Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you, TUSC and the collective, for organising this really important meeting. As Dave mentioned, both of us have represented Coventry South as independent MPs, so clearly something in the air when it comes to fighting injustice in the Labour Party and Coventry. Again, so inspiring to see over 1,000 people on this call, and also the fact that over 100,000 sign-ups after I posted my resignation letter from the Labour Party. We all know that there's a real appetite and energy for a new left-wing force, especially given the fact that this is a Labour Party that is directly enabling genocide, implementing austerity, and the threat of fascism is growling at the door. The urgency of this could not be greater. I was elected, as some of you will know, in 2019 under Jeremy's inspiring leadership, which gave hope to millions of people across the country. But this is not the same Labour Party. A year ago, I was suspended by this Labour Party for voting to lift 400,000 children out of poverty. I would do that again. I voted to scrap the winter fuel payments for pensioners. I voted against scrapping the winter fuel payments for pensioners. I would do that again, and against disability cuts. So as all of you have already been listening to speeches that talk about the three parties or more in Westminster that are run in the interests of billionaires, it is time we had one of our own, a party that stands with workers, not just the wealthy, a genuine democratic socialist alternative that is rooted in the trade union movement and built by and for our class, the working class. The urgency around this is so important. We know that we can't afford to wait, but we also can't afford to get it wrong. And that's why the founding conference must be democratic, inclusive, and open to all participation at every single level. I actually joined this call just to listen. I'm glad Dave has found time for me to be able to speak, because I want you all to know that we want to work with you. I want to work with you to make this happen and create a party that is democratic, proudly socialist and pluralistic. One that is also unapologetically diverse too, where women, people of colour, young people, LGBT people aren't just tokenistic window dressing, but at the heart of decision making. A party that confronts the establishment head on and says, we are not going to take this anymore. We will not accept your smears. We will not accept your racism or your lies, not now or ever. And also, we have to acknowledge the polls, which are great, looking at this new left-wing party, but 10 to 15% in the polls has to be a floor, not a ceiling. We have to be ambitious and aim for 20 to 25% and beyond. All of us will agree on one thing at least, that the Labour Party is dead, and it's time for a mass movement that will take on the billionaire class and the parties that represent them. I'm so excited about this, and I can't wait for every single person on this call, everyone in our workplaces, everyone in our communities to feel like they have a stake in this, and that they can shape it, and that we can win. And I think that's so important. We look at New York, where Zohran Mamdani, a young Muslim person who, whose family moved from Uganda, has beaten the political establishment, the billionaire class, the landlord lobby, the media establishment, and won. And we can take inspiration from parts of Latin America. We can look at our comrades across Europe as well, that the moment is now, the time is now, and let's get cracking. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Zara. That was much appreciated. I've got a couple of more speakers. I realise we're only a minute from our official finishing time, so we may go just a couple of minutes over. But thanks to the wonders of technology, although we couldn't get an internet connection to faraway places and get Len McCluskey, my former General Secretary in Unite, on the call at the beginning, we've managed to get a short text message of support and solidarity from him in the last 30 minutes. So I'm quickly going to read that out, and then I'm going to call Nancy Taff, who is, as I say, was one of the speakers at the Unite conference, and the final speaker, Ian Hodson, the president of the Bakers Union. So Len says, good evening, comrades. Apologies I can't get in the call tonight, but this should be the first meeting of many, and I hope to address the next one. I wanted to send a brief message. It's time for unions and trade unionists to reclaim the battlefield against the far right and rogue bosses. With the many challenges we face today, we need to be clear that no party that truly represents the working class can survive without a strong trade union link. This new party must be organising in every community. This is fundamental to how we win. Many will be doing this already, but we must be influencing internally in our branches and workplaces across the country. This is our moment. There is no time to lose. So that's a message of solidarity and support from Len McCluskey. Nancy, if I could ask you to do 3 minutes, and then Ian afterwards, then that will bring us towards the end of the evening. Nancy, floor's yours.
Can you hear me okay?
We can indeed.
Okay, so my name is Nancy Taff and I'm a Unite rep. I'm also president of Waltham Forest Trades Council and a Socialist Party member. And I seconded the motion, which was passed at Unite Policy Conference, suspending Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, from Unite membership pending an investigation, along with Birmingham City Councillors in the Labour Party. I was one of 6 Socialist Party delegates at that conference in a hall of over 800. And obviously we worked for our branches, but we also worked as active socialists within the conference. We gave our bulletin out to discuss socialist ideas. We sold our paper. We leafleted for our fringe meeting, and we held a fringe meeting. Our speakers raised the need for nationalisation of water, of steel, of transport. I believe we injected socialism and socialist discussion into the conference, not just being anti-austerity. And in doing so, we revealed the lack of socialism in the current Labour government and in Angela Rayner herself. Sharon Graham called the policy conference the Parliament of Unite. And this week reflected the best democratic traditions of the Labour movement. And I believe any new mass workers' party must replicate these long-held democratic traditions in the sense that it must be broad, it must be federal, and it must be inclusive. By the end of the week, the politics debated led to action. The action was suspending Rayner and making national news. This week, there's an article in the Socialist newspaper talking about the motion that was moved at the 1944 Labour Party conference calling for the nationalisation of land, building and heavy industry. And it got me thinking about the importance of motions. I think that motions are ideas, but they're a call to action, and we do need action. I was pleased to hear that Marco and Sheila were talking about passing motions calling for a new mass workers' party through their rank and file trade union organisations. That Catherine talked about bringing it together, a conference of trade unionists along the same motion, along the same lines. We all as trade unionists need to move now. We need to take action and move these motions with the aim of building up momentum towards this new party being born. We don't have limitless time. I'm the president of Waltham Forest Trades Council, and the fascists, the right wing, are mobilising 1,000 people in neighbouring Epping, and we have to get organised against them. There is a gap and we need to fill it. We need to fill it quickly, and we need to discuss these ideas, but we need to be active.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Much appreciated. And echo the points that you made about being active, getting organised, especially against the far right. Ian, if you're on the call, and you are, excellent, you're going to be our last 2 or 3 minutes for this evening before a couple of short housekeeping announcements. So Ian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dave, and congratulations on organising this fantastic event. A really important time. I mean, obviously on the back of, I think, Zara's announcement that launched the excitement around the potential for this new party, with both herself and Jeremy building a new party and a new movement of the left. I think the excitement has been unbelievable. I mean, obviously, I believe there was over 120,000 people that signed up for the motion that Zara put out in support of building this new party. And I've got to say that, obviously, listening to both Jeremy and Zara tonight, what a future we have on the left, and what an opportunity we have on the left with the future of our movement in safe hands. I think what we really need to understand now is how this party is going to be built, the democratic processes that will enable us to create a democratic process that we can all take part in. I know there's been a number of suggestions, and I'm sure there will be lots and lots of people making lots and lots of suggestions about how we build this party. But one of the things about The left, and I would say about Jeremy Corbyn in particular, is he's always been an inclusive person, and he recognises the importance of the way that we work collectively. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, Jeremy was somebody who never actually wanted to be the leader of the Labour Party, but he stood up because we needed him. And now more than ever, we need a collective response to what we're facing as a people. We need a collective labour movement that's organised, that's organising and ready to fight, whether it's in the workplace or on the streets and in our communities. Because the fight that we are in is the fight against a Labour government that's moved so far to the right, it's undistinguishable between the Conservative and Reform. And we're seeing in the polls that Reform is now favourite to form the next government. They've even stolen our language and the policies that we've been putting forward and Jeremy has championed for all these years. We need to have a party that represents our class and represents our interest. So I'm really excited to be here tonight, Dave. Congratulations on organising this. Absolutely courageous decision from Zara. Real inspirational opportunity for both Jeremy and Zara to lead us forward and to build this new party and build it for us, because it is about time we had political representation, and it is about time a party served our interests and built our future. So solidarity, and I look forward to working with everybody here and everybody involved in building this new party. Solidarity.
Thanks so much, Ian, and thanks to everybody who's managed to speak, and sincere apologies with nearly 1,000 people. There was always going to be 990 who didn't get in. Are going to blame me for it. We did have a slight majority, I think, of women speakers, so the balance was good in that sense. We tried to balance speakers from affiliated unions and non-affiliated unions, but those who had a story to tell of either developments in the last 3 months, which gives hope to the idea that trade unions can play a more central role to the development of a new party, or in the case, for example, of Katrine from Wales, of plans of meetings and conferences that are coming up. And I've been getting quite a few messages of people volunteering to organise meetings in their local area or organise meetings for members of their union, and that is much appreciated. As I said at the beginning, we have now the contact details of well over 1,000. It may be maybe 1,500 by the end of this evening, of people who want to involve their colleagues in the workplace and in the trade union structures in discussing practical business-like steps. How do we work to bring this forward in front of more members? And therefore, one of the things we will organise from tonight, particularly in those unions where, as I mentioned earlier on, we've got at least dozens, and in some cases hundreds, of people here on the call from the same union. We'll get the NEC members who've been associated with the campaign, including those who've spoken tonight from the different unions, to organise separate meetings over the next few weeks. And the detailed discussion not only can take place on what motions and meetings and other initiatives should happen within the union, but also a bigger space for more people to ask questions, make contributions, and take ownership of this as a campaign, which in one sense hasn't been the function of this evening, in that it was not possible to get many people in from the floor itself. Jeremy mentioned consultation. The Peace and Justice Project, which Jeremy leads, has actually just put out an invitation to its supporters to answer questions about what sort of party, what sort of structure, what sort of issues and policies should be prioritised in the development towards a new working class party. I put a link to that consultation process as an update to the 1,800 people who have so far signed the petition, which is associated with tonight's meeting, which is on change.org. And I know a lot of you are associated with it and have signed the petition. I've also put on that update a statement from TUSC fully supporting the idea of a new party, as those were the two organisations, once I'd launched this petition and this meeting tonight, who helped by publicising it and spread it amongst their members. So please, if you get the chance to go to change.org, look for the petition. If you've already signed it, you should have had the email this evening in your inbox, and have a look at that consultation from Peace and Justice and the statement from TUSC itself. It only remains for me to finish this evening by stressing this point, that tonight was an introductory meeting. We've managed to pull 1,500 people together. I think there's every prospect we could increase those numbers and dig some serious roots inside many of the unions that have been affiliated here tonight. What unites us is that the establishment, as Zara herself has said, has effectively got four parties it can rely on to misrepresent the majority of ordinary people, or to confuse or divide, in the case of Reform UK, or seek to divide the working class. We haven't got a party of our own we can rely on, one with coherent and solid anti-austerity, anti-war, socialist policies that we can take out to the working class. And we have to build serious roots in the weeks and months ahead in the organisations and the communities of the working class, and put trade unionists and trade unions at the heart of this very encouraging development, and that's the prospect of a new party. But time isn't on our side. I make this point to finish just one more time. The elections next year for local councils are twice as big as they were this year. Reform got nearly 700 new councillors in May of this year, unchallenged, leaving just the establishment parties, which 80 to 90% of working people are turning away from. I think the quote was given, I didn't catch it quite, whether it was in fact a survey that was done in Wales and around Cardiff, but there was a survey that was done in Birmingham where only 5% of voters were considering voting for Labour in the May elections next year. Where are those other votes going to go unless there's a working class challenge and a working class socialist alternative put in front of them? These things don't drop from the sky. They don't arrive, you know, with knights in shining armour on white horses or what have you. They have to be built. They have to be organised. They have to be rooted in our communities and our organisations. And that's what we've tried to do by this meeting this evening. So thanks ever so much for attending, whether you were able to get into the meeting, whether you watched us on Facebook Live. I will write out to all of you, invite you to future activities. You can always ask to be taken off that mailing list, but if you indicated in your first registration you weren't interested in what we were doing in the future, but tonight has inspired you, please let me know and I'll make sure you're involved as well. So that's everything from me. Thanks very much for those who spoke. Thank very much for all of you attending, and it only remains for me to say to you all, safe journey home.